And what happens is that when you run a big company, you're good at making small moves, and you're not as responsive as you should be. And so these little tiny companies are what keep the big CEOs up at night. They're afraid that they're missing something and that they're not going to be able to move as quickly as possible to get in front of it.
Welcome to the Natural Products Marketer Podcast. I'm Tina.
And I'm Amanda, and we're here to make marketing easier for natural products businesses so you can reach more people and change more lives.
Mike Maddock, welcome to the Natural Products Marketer Podcast.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Amanda. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're really excited to talk to you today because we wanted to dive into some critical problems that the natural products retailers are facing these days, including going up against big box stores and online entities like Amazon. And we thought you might have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, so for the last few decades, I've been in the middle of David and Goliath conversations. What's interesting is it's usually Goliath that's afraid of David.
Interesting. Explain that more.
One of my favorite phrases is a Napster moment. And a Napster moment is when someone with no business being in your business comes along and puts you out of business, just like a 16-year-old named Sean Parker did to the record industry. And what happens is that when you run a big company, you're good at making small moves, and you're not as responsive as you should be. And so these little tiny companies are what keep the big CEOs up at night. They're afraid that they're missing something and that they're not going to be able to move as quickly as possible to get in front of it. So usually I'm working for Goliath that's afraid of David. And I like it because I'm an entrepreneur and I consider myself David, always taking on Goliath.
Yeah. So what do you find are the easiest tactics or ways that David can take on Goliath?
The unfair competitive advantage that a small entrepreneur has against a big company is, first and foremost, they're closer to the customer. So they hear every day, every moment what the customer wants. They're not encumbered by these big corporate decisions and shareholders that demand profits, so that they can listen and change and move more readily than big companies. So, you hear the phrase voice of the customer. And, if you're a big company, you hire a research company and you do all kinds of qualitative and quantitative research, and you focus in on one problem to solve. And a year later, you're ready to solve it. Meanwhile, these little retailers or smaller companies have solved it 28 times already, and they're optimizing that solution. So they're so far ahead of the big box retailers, which is why if you look at these big companies, they're constantly buying small companies because they've solved a problem that they haven't even gotten to yet.
Amanda, does that give you any ideas for what some of our stores can do?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me sad almost to hear that, because I hear that, I'm like, oh man, there's so much hope. But also then you have what you said of oftentimes it's Goliath that's afraid of David. And it's I think that we have it all wrong. Because I think there's so many of these smaller companies that are like, oh yeah, Amazon's the bad guy, Walmart's the bad guy. And it's I don't think that's necessarily true, but how to kind of get that in their heads of you have so much more mobility as a business when you're at a smaller level than, like you were saying, it could take a year to possibly even make steps to solving a problem. Yeah, so I think it gives me hope, but also it's wake up, Yeah,
so being a retail expert does not make you a vitamin expert, a tool expert. I prefer to go to Ace Hardware over Home Depot or Menards, or what do y'all have down there? Is
Lowe's.
It Lowe's? Yeah. And the reason is because, their tagline used to be Ace is the place with a helpful hardware man. Now it's a PC version of that. Ace is the place with the helpful hardware folks. And the reason is because they're really good at hiring retired service people who know how to fix things. And so when you go to an Ace, you hear someone say, can I help you with something? They actually can. You can go into the plumbing aisle and they know how to bleed a pipe, or you can go into the electrical aisle and they know, which gauge of wire you need, et cetera, et cetera. And that is their unfair competitive advantage. They're actually hiring people that are experts in what they're selling, not in running a store. And so you see that again and again and again, where, again, getting back to the voice of the customer, they know the language, they know the fears, they know the mistakes, and they're ready to help you. And for me, time is the most valuable thing that I have. So I have to run back and forth to Home Depot 20 times, or I can go to Ace Hardware once or twice. I'm going to choose Ace Hardware, even though it's more expensive. I don't even think about that because time is money. So what I see is, great retailers listen to their customer. B, they hire professionals to work in their stores that are experts at what they're selling, not at running a store. And that creates, again, a really amazing advantage for them because they can very quickly respond to the needs of a customer.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think where maybe some of our industry friends maybe struggle is they see like there's this huge amount of, American consumers that are taking natural products and they're like, we have like the customer base just keeps growing and growing. But they don't know how to maybe get in front of those potential customers who are already shopping at these big box retailers. So then when they hear like, oh, vitamin D is good for you, or you should take a multivitamin, organic's best. And then they go into, their local Target and they see like, oh, this is an organic multivitamin. It must be good. I think that price is good. How do you get people to kind of pay attention to David when they only shop with Goliath?
So one of the mistakes that Goliath will make is they will benefit load. I love the story of TiVo. I don't know if you all remember TiVo, but TiVo was the first DVR, and TiVo became a verb. I'm going to TiVo it. They had a 3-year head start on every other cable company, every other DVR. But the challenge was they weren't using the voice of the customer. The technologists started loading up the benefits. So it can record, you can watch it when you want, no more blinking 12s, no more, like all these different things. And people like me would go, wait, what does TiVo do? And eventually I bought TiVo and I just loved TiVo and I became a raging fan. But they lost the battle because they, instead of figuring out the one thing that customers really wanted, the one benefit that mattered most, no more blinking 12s, whatever that was. It's easy to identify if you're listening to your customer. They told you all the things it could do, and they confused the market. I see that in vitamins, just by way of example. Vitamin D, it helps you lose weight. It helps with hair loss. It helps you sleep better. It helps you, like, what does this thing do? And I think that experts at the point of sale can say, listen, this is the number one thing that you're most interested in, and this doesn't do it, this does, or this in combination. So that expertise using plain spoken language is where that advantage happens. That's not happening on Amazon. That's not happening at Whole Foods. Well, maybe it is once in a while, but only if there's someone in that aisle who can say, oh yeah, I'm in this aisle for a reason. There's all kinds of examples. I remember we worked with SC Johnson many years ago on the Pledge brand. And customers were saying, I just want stuff that works on multiple surfaces, And so we did this big brainstorm, yada, yada, yada. We wound up naming a product multi-surface Pledge because that's what people wanted. That's what they were actually calling it. And so that connection, as simple as it is, only happens if you're listening to your customer. And you can only do that if you're with your customer every day. I hope that helps. I hear a lot of benefit loading happening when it comes to things like vitamins and foods, et cetera.
The big thing, though, that I'm hearing is listening is a skill, and then using the same language that your customers are using is a way to stand out online, on billboards, so that the customer sees the advantage that they're looking for.
Right. So, Tina, this is your expertise. You are a master at using plain spoken language and the questions that people are really asking quietly, not technical terms. These are the conversations people are actually having. And that's what they're searching. That's what they're looking for. And when they search and they find you, the small retailer, they feel kindred. They're like, oh, they get me. And they're local. They're close at hand. I want to go talk to someone that can really help me. Here's the other thing. Health is a really intimate decision. It's like money. These are things that you quietly want to whisper. You don't just go telling everyone that, I'm worried my hair is falling out, I'm losing weight, I'm not sleeping, I'm like screaming at my partner because I'm so anxious. Those are personal conversations that you probably aren't going to have with Amazon or pick a big box. You're going to have them with a friend. And when you have that relationship, they're going to come back to you again and again and again. And I also think you have to be really truthful. There's a the slippery slope here is bullshit. It's okay to say, yeah, we don't know. We're not sure about this. Here's the data we found. That's way better than the treasure hunt that most people go on and, confirm their biases, et cetera.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think, again, most of the retailers I know, they definitely lean into that transparency, or at least I hope they do. They say they do. So I hope they actually do it in practice. But I know like multiple retailers I've worked at where it's like we had a computer on the sales floor where we could pull up, let's look at the clinical trials on this product and see, like, if you don't take my word for it, here we go. Like, walk over together, read through those studies, or, oh, I'm not really sure. Can we double check and make sure that this, vitamin isn't going to interact with your medications? Like, do those things to build that trust. And another thing that I found, especially kind of when there might be some like questionable business ethic type things. I know we had this years ago with some brands that were selling on Amazon for what we couldn't even pay that price wholesale. And we're like, this just isn't going to fly for us. We would take those products off the shelf and customers would come in and be like, why can't I buy that anymore? And it's like, well, we had to make a hard decision about just our business partnership. But you know what? We found that here's a product that's as good, if not better, with a company that we actually trust. And so then it's like you can have that connection and explain, why you're making the decisions you're making, being the gatekeepers of what comes in and off of your shelves. I think that speaks to volumes to customers.
You just made me think of something else, Amanda. I love that you're using a computer real time and saying, yeah, I don't know. Let's check it. It reminds me of a story. Years ago, we were, my wife and I were looking to adopt a child, and it was an open adoption. And in open adoption, you have to go through a list of 300 questions about like health stuff that you would be willing to accept or not. And I wound up calling my cousin, John, who is a cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic. And I'm like, John, I don't know what any of this stuff means. Can you help me understand what these Latin terms mean to know whether I'm willing to adopt a baby with this Latin term? And I remember he kept going, I don't know what that means. Hold on a second. He goes, Mike, what you need to understand is when doctors leave the room, it's because they don't know the answer. They're going to a computer and they're typing it in because they're trying to figure out the right answer. We don't know the answer. So if doctors can do that when it comes to a baby, you can certainly do it at point of sale. And that kind of honesty is really refreshing. Again, it's no BS. I don't know, but I'm concerned and I know how to find out. I was having a conversation with Tina getting ready for this call. And I said, I looked at WebMD, and she goes, hold on a second. I'm going to send you a different link because WebMD's fine, but this one's better. She had done the work and wanted me to be informed when I was trying to make decisions about that. And I was really grateful for it. That's a big deal. So I love that. And there's also, there's this term called marketing myopia, or depending on where you live in the country, marketing myopia. Have you all heard of that?
I'm not familiar, no.
Okay, so there was a Harvard professor in the 60s. His name was Theodore Levitt, and he came up with marketing myopia. His thesis was that people get so good at being in a business that they forget the business that they're in. And so he used tycoons at the turn of the century, railroad tycoons. They own every rail car, every track, every, train cars. Everyone on their team thinks about, this, how to get cheaper steel, how to lay tracks quicker, how to be safer in a train, how to get fuel for trains, et cetera, et cetera. And they wake up one day and and if you ask them what their business they're in, they say, well, we're in the train business, which is incorrect. If instead they had thought, well, we're in the transportation business, those same tycoons today would own every plane, every ship, every railroad, et cetera, but they got myopic about the business that they were in. And so I think the most important question that entrepreneurs can ask themselves is, what business are we really in here? Or said differently, what business do we have the right to be in? And if you think you're in the retail business, you are competing with Amazon. You are. And you don't want that fight. Amazon is in the retail business. They are in the disrupting retail business. You don't want to pick that fight. So the question is, what business are you really in, or what business do you have the right to be in? And when you can answer that question based on your unique abilities and the questions you're answering to your customers every day, you have the right to develop parallel tracks of business that Amazon never would want to or never could. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that most of the retailers out there that will be listening to this will believe and understand that they are health and wellness partners, not just supplement providers or retailers or that sort of thing. And the thing I love about that is it's all about building trust and transparency and relationship with the customer that comes in the door. And at the same time, they start to fight these battles sometimes whenever they've been representing brands, as this is a brand you can trust. And Amanda kind of hit on this earlier, but they're sort of hanging their brand alongside the brand of a manufacturer because they believed in the process and in the manufacturer, in their transparency and their trustworthiness. And then sometimes that brand starts to no longer deliver on their promise. And then the customer can get confused because the health and wellness partner said, this is something that you can trust, but now it's not anymore. So what do they do when that happens?
Yeah, so I think that if you're in the retail business, you're totally screwed, because essentially you're putting stuff on the shelf and hoping that someone else's brand carries the flag for you. And as soon as they drop that flag, you're done. If you're in, how did you describe it? What
Health and wellness partners.
Okay, so let me tell you a story that because that means something to me, but I'm not sure it's direct enough. Like, what does health and wellness partner mean? I have a friend, his name is Rick Jameson, and Rick is a Canadian, and he is the brake pad king of North America. What does that mean? Well, he's been manufacturing brake pads for every major manufacturer, and his dad did for 4 or 5 decades. And I called him just after COVID started, and I said, Rick, how are you doing? And he's like, oh, yeah, this COVID thing. Hey, it's nuts, huh? And I said, yeah, how's business? He goes, oh, it's good. It's good, But you know what I think I'm going to do? Have you heard of these ventilators? There's a ventilator shortage. I think I'm going to build ventilators. And I said, well, Rick, you're the brake pad king of North America. What right do you have to build ventilators? And he said, well, you got that wrong, Mike. See, I don't know if you know it, but brake pads are a regulated product because they have asbestos in them. And I'm a CPA. And what I do is I negotiate contracts in a regulated industry. My expertise, the business I'm actually in, is in the highly regulated contract business. And ventilators, medical products, are highly regulated. I know how to negotiate contracts like that. So I'm going to go win some. I just happen to manufacture brake pads. I just happen to sell vitamins. I just happen to sell organic foods. I'm the highly regulated product contract negotiation business. That conversation 45 days later, I called Rick back and said, how is it going? He had won a $500 million PO. He'd signed $500 million. He'd never made a medical device in his life, but he knew the business that he was in. And that opened up the possibility for him to go, yeah, I'm just going to do ventilators. And he did it. I mean, he manufactured ventilators because he knew the business he was in. So I guess what I would press your listeners to do, and there's a process for this. And if anybody's interested, send me a note and I will send you a cool Venn diagram to think about it in a quick process. But it's, what are your unique skills? What do your customers want from you? Forget about the products for a second. Think about what they're asking you to do and what your staff can uniquely offer them. And that's where the parallel businesses are. One last thing. We did a prediction market study just after the pandemic started to figure out the future advice or professional advisors. So it sounds like the people that listen to this podcast are professional advisors. And a prediction market is like Wall Street or a Vegas gambling book. People put their own money in to make a prediction and they get paid more. Like the robots and algorithms pay them more money based on the data behind their prediction, how many people bet behind them, follow their prediction, yada, yada, yada. We came up with 12 predictions. The number two greatest prediction, and it's going to happen in 2 to 3 years, was that people will buy things. We called it the horizontal land grab, that trusted advisors would be able to sell other products, other services based on their unique place in the market. So insurers will be able to sell trusts. Realtors will be able to sell landscaping and home repair, because why? Well, I trust my realtor to know who all those people are. It's all based on the relationship and the knowledge you bring to the relationships you have. So again, I will say the most important question that your listeners can be asking themselves is either what business am I in, or what business do I have the right to be in? Once you figure that out, it won't matter whether you're selling brand A or brand B, because you will be the trusted advisor that can do all kinds of things with your customer.
Yeah, and just as a note, we won't wait for people to ask for the Venn diagram. We'll get it up in the show notes for the podcast.
No,
Awesome.
I love that because, I mean, we talk about this all the time, how, if you are the health and wellness authority in your community, people are coming to see you for you, not because of the products that you sell. Like, that's just icing on the cake. And so it's like, if you don't feel like you have that authority, maybe you did have that, 20 years ago when you started your business, but you've kind of lost that wow factor that maybe you had back in the day, maybe that's not true anymore. So I think asking those hard questions, I think is really, really important to do.
Oh, and one of the things that we were talking about yesterday, Amanda, you and I, it's the online commerce piece and the fulfillment of customer expectations, because Amazon has really sort of set the table for what that expectation and delivery needs to look like. Mm-hmm. And if you're a smaller retailer, it's difficult to get online and to fulfill in that same way and to meet all of those online expectations.
So I wonder how many of your retailers have considered going online or white labeling product themselves. If it's all about convenience, there's no reason why your retailers can't say, well, no problem, we can send it online with this other brand, but we can only get these brands directly to the store because they're special. I mean, you can differentiate. Here's a dirty little secret. I have plenty of friends and clients that are selling B2B, but they went B2C white label version. No one needed to know. And their strategy for competing with Amazon was to be a smaller version of Amazon. And they did it secretly because they didn't want to tick off their B2B partners. So you can be aggressive with that. It does occur to me that I'm here going, what business do you have the right to be in? It's like, I don't know. One of the challenges that I've faced over the years is I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm good at starting and really lousy at finishing. I'm your starter, but not your finisher. And I noticed that companies that are really good at pivoting when things, where they're being punched in the face by the future, are equally as bad at finding a formula that works and sticking with it. So in my own experience, whenever everything was going really well, I just wanted to start a new thing. And I should have been focused on, no, wait a minute, something's working here. I should scale this. And it's an issue. And so having an advisory board that is balanced, like I wrote a book called Free the Idea Monkey. It's back there. And it was about Roy Disney and Walt Disney, like the operator and the visionary, the idea monkey and the ringleader. And the paradox, the partnership paradox, is that if you get along really well with your partner, it's probably the wrong partner, because you want a partner that thinks differently under pressure. You want a partner that when I'm ready to put on the jazz hands and come up with the next big idea, the partner's going, no, we need to focus on what got us here, and to extend that, the greatest companies that I know have an advisory board or a board of directors, and there are 6 characters around it. There's the visionary, the idea monkey. There's a strategist like Tina. Tina's a strategist. There's a rainmaker. There's a visionary. There's a tech futurist, and there's an orchestrator. And under pressure, each one of those people see a different type of opportunity. So, for example, if you own a retail store and you're no longer profitable, the operator will say, let's cut costs. Let's look at the P&L and what will be profitable next month. The strategist will say, well, maybe we're measuring the wrong thing. What are our goals here? The rainmaker will say, we need more business. The visionary will say, we need to acquire or start something new, or come up with some kind of term like marketing myopia. Maybe we're in the wrong business. The tech futurist will say, we should go online. We need a tech stack. And the orchestrator will say something like, we have the wrong people. We're just not getting along. We're afraid to challenge each other. And the question is, who's right? And the answer is that they're all right at different points in time. But unless you have each one of those characters who can look at a problem through a different lens, you're going to be a hammer looking for a nail. And said differently, my buddy Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there. And so if you were great at starting a store and everything was going really well until it wasn't, it's probably because you're out of balance. You don't have the executive team or the board of advisors that can say, you keep trying to solve the same problem over and over again. It might be you're working on the wrong problem. And so I'm a big believer in boards of advisors. I started a company called Flourish Advisory Boards that is turnkey just for this. And I love being in the room where someone that's been trying to solve a problem, just like this one, over and over again, all of a sudden shifts and go, wait a minute, I'm thinking about this the wrong way. And that's how you get unstuck. That's how you scale. Because I know how maddening it is to be in a situation and just nothing you're doing is working anymore. And people are depending on you to figure it out. It's lonely. It's a lonely spot to be in.
So when you say this is turnkey, you mean that you have a board of advisors that are ready to help people make decisions?
Yeah, I interview entrepreneurs, CEOs, P&L owners to figure out which of those 6 seats they run to when their hair is on fire or having their best day of their life. It's the same seat. And then I'll put together virtual groups that meet once a month that bring their toughest personal and business challenges, and they talk about them. And they get to see how that problem is viewed through 5 different lenses. It's really remarkable, actually, how first, how good it feels to hear that many people have had the same issues. And second, to hear that maybe there's a different way to look at it that is that will create a breakthrough in your life or company.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I know this was one of the first things that Tina kind of helped me with years ago when we started working together, is like, well, what does your business do? And it's like, we do 50 things. It's like, no, like pick like no more than 3. Like, what do you really do? And it's like, get out of your head and think through, like, and what do customers see you do? It's like, it's so easy to get wrapped up in all of the things that you do and just be like, but how do you communicate it in 1 second? So yeah, I think that that would be an incredibly helpful tool for these business owners to just, because so many of the retailers that we work with are like, they're just mom and pop. Like, you know, it's the, you know, the founder of the company, and, you know, maybe their child, or, you know, it's a husband and wife team or whatever, and they've just been doing this for so long, and it's so easy to just get very just you lose sight of what's going on outside of your 4 walls.
Yes, and building on that, Amanda, the tendency is to be embarrassed and to hide. You know, it's well, I can't figure this out, and I don't want to talk about it because I can't figure it out, and that's the wrong strategy. You know, I've been involved in these groups for 25 years. I've been in one of these groups for 23, and then another one for 15. And I'll tell you what, it sustained me through some very, very difficult times because. You know, not to get too soft or squishy, but when someone really understands you and like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and still wants to support you and loves you for it, it's so it's such a lift. You know, there's so much weight that comes off your shoulders. And I think business owners all that share that in common. They carry a giant burden. I had a friend, Dave Kaplan, God rest his soul, who used to say the crown is heavy. I mean, who do you talk to about, I might need to let someone go, or this person that I'm working with is not working out, or because, you know, everyone sees you as this, oh, that must be really hard, business owner who doesn't have a boss and can make their own hours and pays themselves whatever they want. Well, okay. It is hard because people are people, and there aren't a lot of people you can talk to about those types of issues. So it's wonderful if you can find a group like that.
Yeah. And what stands out to me is that I know organizations like SINPA and others are a great place for community among similar business owners. And yet there's so much richness and depth outside of the natural products industry. So if you can find an advisory board that is not just in your industry or not just retailers, then it helps you get a deeper perspective.
Yeah, and I thank you for reminding me. My favorite saying is you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. What does that mean? It means the longer you've been in a relationship, a industry, a company, the more of an expert you become. You know what works. You know what people want to buy. You know what you can sell. You know what you can afford. You know what you've tried in the past. You know. And the more you know, the harder it is for you to see possibility when it's walking right in front of you, when your customers keep asking you for it. And so, you know, one of my companies has done work with 25% of the biggest brands in the world. And when they're going to start an innovation group, my first piece of advice is, for the love of God, please do not hire someone from within your industry, because they're experts. And the Napster moment happens when someone with no business being in your business, not an expert, comes along and puts you out of business because they see possibility that you can no longer see. That happens in industry groups. You know, I love industry groups because you can take shortcuts, but you're not going to find disruption. You're not going to find the best ways to pivot looking at what everybody else is doing in your industry, regardless of the industry.
I think that's great. And the other thing that it brought to mind for me, Amanda, we've been talking about this. There are a lot of those husband and wife owners, or just people who have started the business, but they've brought their children up into the business, who are owners and operators now themselves, and or aspiring to be, or someone on the team who's just a great operator that might be the next generation. And this sounds like an awesome opportunity for them to learn from other business owners how to run a store. So maybe you've found what your business actually is. But on top of that, you still do have to run retail well. So,
Right. I have 4 Flourish Advisory members that were referred to. Their operating presidents, not family members, but operating presidents that were referred to by CEOs in other advisory boards that I run, who said, I want this person who is now running a division for me or a new company that we just acquired to have ideas that aren't my ideas. I want them to be able to go out into the wild and come back and see things differently than we see them here. This person needs that. So whether it's a son, a partner, a P&L owner, whatever, being able to go out and bring in new perspective is where all the action is. It doesn't diminish industry knowledge, but I'm assuming most of your listeners already have that. They already know they're successful at doing what they did yesterday a little bit better today. But when the earth is shifting under your feet, usually that's not enough.
all right. Well, this is all great. Where can people find out how to join a Flourish Advisory Board?
Flourishadvisoryboards.com is how you find the information about that. And, I'm happy to help anybody. If you send me a note and you have a question, if I can connect you to people or possibility, I'm happy to do it. I think it's what I was born to do. So don't hesitate to reach out. And everything I'm talking about is contained in a book, a Forbes article, an Inc. article, a white paper. So I talk really fast because I'm from the Midwest, but I assure you there's more information that I can send you if you'd like.
Every interviewee gets asked a few questions at the end of our podcast. So, Amanda, do you want to do the honors?
Okay, so first question. So who do you kind of pay attention to, follow? What books do you read so you can kind of just stay at the top of your game in business?
I should have a better answer for this. My mentor, Rick Voren, he's the chairman of Stegan Integral Leadership. I once went to him and said, I was just complaining. I won't mention the name because it's mean, but there was a famous CEO that had written a bunch of books, and I saw him on TV with his new mistress, and I was so mad. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's not even divorced yet. And I was totally judgy, capital J, judgy. And I said, I just have trouble learning from people that I don't like or respect. And Rick said, Mike, you need to learn how to judge the medicine, not the vessel. Like, so I tend to pay attention to people that I really like and respect, like Patrick Lencioni. I really like Pat. And Marshall Goldsmith I mentioned earlier. But then there are people that are disruptors, that have a dark side. Like I pay attention to Elon Musk because he is ridiculous in how he thinks about the world and what he does, even though honestly, I think he's a little cray-cray sometimes, much of the time. So, I will admit to you that I'm like a mile wide and an inch thick. I tend to like pop from one thought leader to another. And my rule is if I can take one nugget that makes me go, that's enough for me. So I'm not sure. That's a long answer, Amanda, but
good one though. So what do you think, and this is probably a loaded question or just not easy to answer, but do you have a single biggest decision that has led to your success in business?
I have paid more attention to my dreams than my fears. That's my decision.
Shortest answer.
I was not expecting that.
It was a good one though.
That is good.
I like it.
That could be like a slogan on a coffee mug or something.
Total t-shirt. You were due for a short answer. You're welcome.
No, I like that because we sort of started the podcast around some mindset pieces, and this just brings it all back to, hey, this paradigm shift of David shouldn't be afraid of Goliath. Goliath should be afraid of you, and they are. And also, don't pay attention to your fears, pay attention to your dreams. So it all weaves so nicely together.
I feel like we just need to
It
close
did,
right there. Like, done.
did it.
If the musicians will come to
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
instruments.
Forget the rest of my questions. Okay, so since you are not inside the natural products industry, do you have anything that you think that we should change about how we market in the natural products industry as an outsider looking in?
I mentioned it earlier. I think that, like every industry, it can be tainted by a few bad people. Like, I have a friend, very good friend, who got cancer, and he grew up in Iowa, Osage, Iowa. He's still with us, but he was a sophomore in college, and he went to a chiropractor who, this is God's truth, who balanced a stainless steel jar on his belly button, had him do leg lifts, say, watch your toes, and started throwing vitamins into the jar. And he goes, when your toes become even, that's what you need to take. And he told me this story, and he's like, Michael, it was amazing, Michael. It was amazing. I'm like, Brian, are you kidding me? And he goes, I go, that's what you're going to do to treat this cancer? He goes, well, I'm also going to the Mayo Clinic. I'm like, oh, thank God. And so I think that there is a dark side to every industry, including natural products and vitamins, that creates a huge opening for the bright side, where it's like, yeah, that's not true. That's not true. We don't know. We don't know. This is what we know. And I am going to go to the retailer or to the person, to the expert who cuts the BS and just says, this is what we know. And that takes work. But I think that's how trust is built. So, no BS vitamins would be an interesting brand that just told the truth. Like, you turn around, it's like, we don't really know what this does, but like, please, somebody tell the truth. And that would be the first group I would go to when emerging science starts to know. I think people are willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. So again, long answer number 2 for those of you who are keeping track.
I love it. It reminds me of, we called them the leaners. They would come into the store and hold the bottle like close to their chest, and it's like whether they leaned forward or not when they held the product, it determined whether or not they should buy it. And if they didn't lean, it's like, nope, can't buy it. And it was just fascinating to watch. So that just made me laugh.
And you just reminded me of something I completely forgot about. We did a project for General Mills probably 10 years ago, and we did ethnographies. We would walk into the store and watch people, and there was a certain set of people that really cared deeply about what they were putting into their bodies. Probably the same people that are listening to this, or the customers of the people listening to this podcast. And what we noticed was people would pick up cereal, look at it, and squint. And just squint and then put it back. And they do like all the way down the aisle. And our suggestion was to put the nutritionals on the front of the package. And we created a banner where right on the front, big and bold, you didn't have to pick it up. We put like fat content, calories, like right there. And if you go down the cereal aisle today, you'll notice that almost everyone has copied it because people just wanted. And here's the big aha. People assume that if you put the nutritionals up front, you had nothing to hide, and they buy it because they figured like you were telling the truth. You're not hiding it in like all the small print. It's right up on front. So they just put it in their cart and go, thank you. So there's a thread there to pull.
Well, one thing we always like to ask is if you have any suggestions for quick wins for people, as retailers, and in particular, since that's kind of what we're discussing mostly today. What are some quick wins, low hanging fruit that you think that they could grab a hold of in their business today?
I'm reminded of the founder of the Container Store talking about how they paid their employees 25% above national average, and they spent 5x in training. I think if you're an advisor, paying your people more is sort of counterintuitive. And what happens is when you're pinched for money, you're looking to save it everywhere. I would pay your people more. I would go out and find the best people, the most clever, the most invested in the business that you're in, pay them more, reward the behavior that you're looking for in terms of comp and whatever. And then one other thing, there's I remember when I went to hire my business partner, Maria, she had come from a Fortune 20 company. She was the head of marketing for this company. And there's no way I could afford her. And she said, and I'm like, I know what you make. I can't pay you that. You make like twice what I make. I can't pay you. And she said, well, what you need to understand, Mike, is that I'll call it a compensation buffet. And you have things in your buffet that are not available to me where I am right now. Things like time and creativity and being able to laugh and not having to worry about A, B, and C, and writing. I've always wanted to write, and yada, 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 yada. And that's worth way more to me than money. It's not about money. So when I say pay people more, try to have a conversation about what that compensation buffet looks like. It might be like, I want a different title. I want to be the head, like the future engineer, the health future engineer, whatever. Some people care about title. Some people care about being part of the decision making, or being on the team, or having, being able to come and go as they please. All that stuff is part of the compensation buffet. So pay them more, but pay them what they want. Don't make it about money.
I love that. It's funny. I've had so many conversations with people that have come from these big box retailers that come to work for these, independently owned grocery stores and natural products retailers. And they're just like, man, it's so nice to just be able to make a sign the way that I want it to look. And not be like, here you go, like, this is the sign. It's like, no, like, I get creativity and freedom to fail and get to put my own little flair on things, where it's like you walk through the aisles and you're like, oh, I can tell who made that sign. Like, simple things like that, of just being able to be creative. Like, it's amazing how much that means to people.
Amen, sister. I mentioned Ace Hardware. John Venhuizen, their CEO, is a friend of mine. I actually met him because he was giving a sermon at church one day during my nephew's baptism. And I went up to him afterward. I'm like, you're a really good speaker. Are you a preacher? He goes, no, I work in hardware. I just happened to be here. And we became friends. And eventually he became CEO. And we've done a little bit of work for them. And it's actually their business model that makes all this happen. They are structured such that people that really care about the industry can start their own places. They can hire their own people. They can compensate those people the way they want. And the mothership is just there to support that buffet of comp. So there's a there. And just bring it all back to Goliath. Goliath ain't doing that. Goliath can't do that.
They have to be cookie cutter.
Yeah, we're sitting here with UAW on strike against 3 large automakers who are like, we can't do that. We won't do that. If we do that, we have to do it for thousands and thousands of people. And it's just too big for them to even think about. You can do whatever you want. You own your own company.
Awesome. So if people want to get in touch with you, Mike, how can they do that?
I'll just keep it at flourishadvisoryboards.com. If you send me a note there, I'll see it. Or Stephanie, my number 2 here, will make sure that I see it, and I will be in touch with you if you want to be in touch with me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for agreeing to spend your time with us today. I know that our listeners are going to get so much value out of this, having some quick wins, and also a lot to chew on and think about, especially as they walk through your Venn diagram that we'll provide in the show notes.
The Venn diagram. Nice to be with you, Tina and Amanda. It's been a real pleasure.
Okay. And as sort of an ending here now, here's a personal question. Should people listen to this podcast?
If you own a small retail operation and you feel like you are David taking on Goliath every single day, this podcast is for you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Natural Products Marketer podcast. We hope you found this episode to be super helpful. Make sure you check out the show notes for any of those valuable resources that we mentioned on today's episode.
And before you go, we would love for you to give us a review, follow, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening today. And make sure you join us for our next episode where we give you more marketing tips so that you can reach more people and change more lives.